This week on Outdoor Oklahoma, we take a look at the Sooner State's highly successful deer management program. We'll talk with biologists about how far we've come and what's next on the horizon for Oklahoma deer hunters. From the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, Outdoor Oklahoma. Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead, and today I'm joined by Eric Bartholomew, our big game biologist. Thanks for joining me.
You bet.
You know, we're talking deer management today, and I think that that's probably a subject you know a little bit about.
Just a little bit, yeah.
You know, Eric, it wasn't too many years ago, really, where it was kind of a big deal during, say, deer gun season to even see a deer.
You bet. Yeah, I can remember my grandpa telling me stories of, you know, somebody saw a deer and they were a great deer hunter, and to get one, man, you were like a superstar, you know?
That's right. You know, in fact, my grandpa, who I think of as a really avid outdoorsman, never harvested a white-tailed deer in Oklahoma. He always had to go out of state to deer hunt. So we've got a tremendous legacy here in this state, and it's been thanks to the hard work of a lot of sportsmen and a lot of biologists too. Back, say, nearly 100 years ago, kind of go through what deer management looked like back then.
Sure. You know, in the 20s, we actually had to close deer season. There was an estimated 500 animals, you know, in the whole state, and so based on that, it wasn't legal to harvest or to hunt deer anyway, you know.
Sure.
In the 30s, you know, it was kind of hit or miss. The numbers got up enough that we held seasons. A lot of those were in the southeast part of the state, and that was buck only. Usually on the years that we did have around 350 or so bucks were harvested on those years.
Some counties harvest way more than that now.
Oh yeah, you bet. I couldn't tell you right now off the top of my head.
Right.
But, in the 40s, you know, there was no deer hunting early in the 40s just because of World War II, and a lot of our employees were overseas. In the late 40s, we began our trap and transplant program, moving deer around the state. In the 50s, we actually had our first archery season. And then in the 1970s, we had our Cy Curtis program established, and that's our deer records program. And it's named for Cy Curtis, who started the trap and transplant program.
You bet.
In the 1980s, we quit moving deer around. We basically had saturated the state with deer numbers. So much so, in fact, that in 2006 here, a few years ago, you know, we had a record deer harvest of just over 119,000 animals harvested that year.
Think Cy Curtis would have ever dreamed that would be possible someday?
It's pretty phenomenal, really. Most recently here in 2011, our archery hunters actually harvested more deer than our muzzleloader hunters. So we had that first archery season back in the 50s, and now our archery hunters are doing better than our muzzleloader hunters are.
That's great. I wish Cy Curtis could be around today to see how far we've come with our program.
No kidding.
You know, today we've got the rare opportunity to visit with Mike Shaw. And if that name rings a bell, Mike was our wildlife supervisor for 20 years here at the department. And during that time, some very significant things happened to our deer management program.
Well, when I was first hired back in the late 70s, it was 1979, we were only harvesting 13,000 deer in the whole state. So, you know, people had been preached to for many, many decades that we were supposed to protect the does. That was the future of the herd. And it was apparent to most of the biologists in the department that we had to implement some sort of a doe harvest or antlerless harvest in order to keep the herd in check in certain areas, predominantly in the eastern part of the state. And that was a big challenge. Even within the department, some of the folks that worked on these wildlife management areas, they had spent their whole careers basically protecting does. And I don't think anybody, including me, had the idea or understood at that time the explosive growth of the herd that was to come. Well, from 1979 to basically, when we were harvesting 12,000 deer, the herd grew exponentially. And by 2000, I think it was the first year that we actually harvested over 100,000 deer. And by 2006, we hit a record harvest of 119,000, just shy of 120,000 deer. So, it really grew during my career, my tenure with the department. And I guess nowadays you're still harvesting, on average something like 110,000 deer. So we've been able to sustain that harvest, and that's great. One thing you have to remember is that deer productivity varies quite a bit from one part of the state to the other. So we had to adjust the way that people were going to take antlerless deer to get a certain percentage that we desired. And we started out, back in the mid-70s by issuing permits. Probably, there are some people still around that remember the permit program. And when we went through several iterations of that, the first ones were, permits by county, and then we went to more of a scientific method where we allotted permits by harvest unit. That was never really met with a lot of success. We never really achieved the antlerless harvest that we needed, so we decided to move to an antlerless day system, what we still have, and that was much more successful. And we were able to adjust antlerless days and make them available, in different seasons and different times during the season, and generally come up with an antlerless harvest that was, that was practical and that met our desires for that particular harvest unit or area of the state. Early on in the late 90s, we began to have some issues not only with hunters. Hunters, we were doing a good job as far as managing the herd for them, but we had some problems with depredation, crop depredation, and it was decided at that time that what we should do would be to hold a series of stakeholder meetings where we get together all of the people in the state or representatives from different groups, farmers, ranchers. We had people within the department from law enforcement, administration, biologists. We had insurance people. A variety of people, anybody really basically that had a stake in what the deer herd was doing. And we went around the state and held 6 or 7 different meetings. And I started out by giving a short program showing what the herd had done, give them a little bit of a historical and biological background. And then basically we opened it up for comments. And we ended up with thousands and thousands of comments, which we went through and basically tried to synthesize those into some recommendations. And the result was that we came up with a series of recommendations that we made to the commission, several of which were approved, which expanded antlerless opportunity, and there was some recommendations as far as the Deer Management Assistance Program, and it was really the first concerted effort, I think, other than public hearings, that we made to really involve people around the state and get them involved with the deer program. We had preached protect those does for so long, and then we just totally went the other way and said we need to harvest does, and it wasn't something that was going to happen overnight. We needed to get the word out and explain why, and I think the magazine and a variety of publications, the regulations, we always used those, big game report. We use those to try to explain our methodology, our techniques for doing that. And eventually I think hunters became more aware, especially as the herd grew to the point where they could see that harvesting does wasn't going to have a detrimental impact on the population.
You're a big boy. Good job, Eli. Good job, buddy. Good job. Good shot.
Now let's visit again with Eric Bartholomew, our big game biologist, and find out what we're doing today as far as deer management.
If you look at where we are today compared to the last few decades, we've made a transition from a numbers game to looking at more quality for deer. So overall deer habitat management and just overall quality. And some people think of quality as bigger bucks. One way you can get there is through our Deer Management Assistance Program, or DMAP. With DMAP, it's a program designed for properties that are 1,000 acres or more. And that can be leased land, that can be all under one landowner. It can be a conglomeration of landowners that have just decided to manage deer the same way. The more acres you can put together with the same sort of management going on, the better you're going to be able to control what goes on those acres. By working with a biologist, the group, the landowner, can develop a strategy to help them reach their deer management goals, whether it's quality, whether they want to see more deer, whether they want to see fewer deer overall, but more bigger bucks, or whatever the case may be. Another thing that we've done here recently is to transition to a totally online check station system. They can go on the website via a mobile device, they can go home and check it online, but they can go straight to the internet, they can check it online. It just takes a few minutes, they print off a confirmation number and they're done. They can do it from the field even on their mobile device. As a deer manager, for me, it makes it a lot easier to tabulate that data every year. Before we would have to send off our books, we would have to get those entered in, have to edit all that information, and now it's all online. We download that data and can start tabulating results as soon as season's over. Something else that we have going on here is that now we have our decoy deer that we use, and that's really helped to curtail poaching in some parts of the state. It basically serves as a deterrent, and it gives that deer a chance to get away. Spotlight at night and they're trying to do something illegal, they think, hey, I wonder if that's the decoy. And it gives that deer a chance to get away and to grow into something better for the future. As we've transitioned from the numbers to a more quality management schema, you can look back and combine all the efforts that we've done, the population management, the habitat management, and what you see is in our Cycurtis program, for example, it's our record book program just for Oklahoma harvested deer. And if you look at the graph for that, it's just gone up and up, and we continue to add more deer to the program every year. What that tells me as a deer manager is that there's more quality deer out there running around. What it also tells me is that our hunters are being more selective in their harvest. So they're letting those younger bucks grow up and become a more quality deer. Oklahoma hunters also benefit from the opportunities that we now have available. We have more opportunity for doe harvest. We've got more doe days available for during deer gun season. In addition to that, we have our holiday gun season, usually the last week of December, and that gives hunters another chance to put some meat in their freezer. Another thing that defines our present age is our youth season that we have now. A tremendous opportunity for youth to get into the sport of deer hunting. It occurs in October, so temperatures are usually milder. You don't have to bundle them up from head to toe. Deer are moving that time of year, looking for resources, and the rut's just starting to get going a little bit. So it gives youth hunters a great chance to get out there and experience deer hunting for the first time. Personally, as a deer hunter here in Oklahoma, this is a great state. We've got multiple opportunities to sit in a tree stand and hunt deer. If I wanted to, I could sit in a tree stand 100 days of the year. It's an exciting time. We've gone from the numbers game to one of quality, and the future's the horizon. We have so much that we can do with deer management here in Oklahoma, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
Jerry Shaw is our wildlife supervisor, and we're going to get his perspective of what the future holds for deer management right after this week's Outdoor News Report.
And we looked to our left, and I think we both saw him at the same time. A nice little buck come walking in. This time I don't think I had to say anything to her. She stayed real calm, took her time, had to wait for the buck to kind of move, or a few deer move away from the buck before we could get a good shot at it.
There he is.
Holy smoke. Hold on, don't just run up on him. He's dead. There's your first buck. What do you think?
Oh, man.
That's awesome.
Dad, I'm so excited that on the first day I got to go hunting, I got 2 deer. Not only just a doe, but a good-sized buck, all in the same night. It's just time I'll never forget.
Well, I tell you what, I couldn't be more proud.
Over the span of the 20 years I've been working with the deer program here in Oklahoma, we really have made quite significant changes. When I first hired on, we were more geared towards just numbers. We wanted maximum opportunity for our hunters, and the quality of the animal really wasn't quite a concern. Now, as hunters are becoming a little bit more savvy, a little bit more educated, they're taking on more of that management role that used to be in place with regulations. Hunters themselves are deciding how they're wanting to manage the deer on their property. As a result, we're changing some regulations and kind of changing our focus a little bit from not necessarily just a maximum opportunity to making sure we have a balanced herd that's in line with the herd itself and in line with the habitat. As a result, we're able to provide opportunity, but at the same time, we're able to increase some of the quality of the animals that we have. If you look at deer hunting through the generations, if you look at my dad's generation, when he began deer hunting and when he was active, just seeing a deer was a big accomplishment. Now that my children are starting to deer hunt, they get bored if they sit in a stand and don't see 10 deer a night. So as the population has changed and as the habitat has changed around the state, you know, our attitudes towards management had to adapt as well. One way that we get to those attitudes of our hunters is through our annual game harvest survey, a scientific study that actually gets us feedback on what our hunters are wanting us to manage for. I tell people that we can manage for any type of situation that they want. We just need to know their input. Currently, the input is about down the middle. We have just a slightly higher number of hunters that are looking for opportunity. They're just wanting the chance to go out and take any deer. But a growing proportion of our hunters are interested in quality deer management or in trophy deer management. They're wanting to see bigger animals. And as our survey data has shown, with more hunters interested in managing for quality animals, it's important for us as an agency to remind our hunters that they are the managers. We can make recommendations, but when you're actually in the woods, the animals that you take and the animals that you pass on is a management decision. And it's our job to educate hunters as to what the results of those management decisions might be. You know, there are several factors that you can look at to see examples of how technology has improved hunting and the attitudes of hunters that might take them away from just trying to get an animal to hunting for maybe a specific animal. Trail cameras and their proliferation. You can't hardly go on a property now without 2 or 3 cameras taking your picture as you come in. Hunters have an idea of what actually is on the landscape, and once they know that, they're a lot more likely to sit in that tree and let some of these smaller animals go by, waiting for that one deer of a lifetime that maybe they've seen on camera 2 or 3 times. Social media also plays a large role in that. You know, people are pretty prone to post pictures that they have from their trail cameras, showing off what their management plans have actually built on their property, and they're sharing those ideas and sharing those photos and just building that quality deer community. If you've been a deer hunter in Oklahoma for any length of time, you probably remember the slogan, "Hunters in a know take a doe." A lot of credit has to go to our hunters. They took that slogan to heart and have actually increased antlerless harvest over the years. Now we're at roughly 45 to 40% of our annual harvest is comprised of antlerless deer. It's important to point out that we need to continue that level of antlerless harvest. Just because we're entering into a new phase of deer management in Oklahoma, we can't leave that one behind. But as we enter into this new phase, we've also come up with a new slogan. It's hunters in the know, let young bucks grow. What this is designed is to increase voluntary restraint on the harvest of young bucks. The goal is to add more older age animals to the landscape. As a result, we should have improved herd dynamics as well as increased the number of quality deer that are available for our hunters. Reflecting back on my career, I was fortunate to come into a program that had been managed excellently by Mike Shaw. For years, he held the reins of the deer program and really built it into a program that Oklahoma should be proud of. It's important for me as a manager to remember that I play just a small role in deer management. It's the hunters in the field themselves that are making these management decisions. We can provide education, we can provide training, and we can provide regulations, but it's the hunters themselves making those management decisions when they're in the tree, behind their bow, behind their rifle, that every time they pull the trigger, they're making a management decision. And without their buying into the program, without their participation, and without their hard work and dedication, our deer management program would not be where it is today. I also feel fortunate that as I step away from my role as a deer manager for the state, that I'm leaving it in very capable hands. Eric Bartholomew is a bright young man, very energetic, and he has some new ideas that I think are really going to bring Oklahoma to the forefront in deer management in America.
You know, it's exciting sometimes to look back on the last 100 years of deer management here in Oklahoma and see just really how far we've come. But much of that credit goes to you as the sportsman, because we can make all the recommendations in the world, but without you following those through regulations, it wouldn't make any difference at all. We're excited about the future of hunters in the know, let young bucks grow, and hope that you'll take it to heart this year. For all of us at your wildlife department, I'm Todd Craighead, and we'll see you right here next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.